week. Even though it's a new session, we're still on time. Still 7 o'clock, always on time. How's everyone doing tonight? Excuse me as I once again, a week doesn't change anything. We took a little bit of time off. But still on time, but still on time while also getting myself together. But how's everyone doing tonight? Welcome to Mastermind Academy. For any newcomers, welcome to Waddle, Foundations in Linux. You'll find out why it's called Waddle shortly. But usually what we do on here is we give people a few minutes to get on in, to get comfortable, while we're also gathering ourselves. We'll probably get started right around 7:10. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. If you're first time around here, let me know. I'd love to, I'd love to meet all of you. Let us know where you're tuning in from as well. Frequency, what's up? Pequeño jalapeno. Welcome, first time being here live. Excellent. I'm glad to have you. Pretty dope. Happy Feet OS. You gotta get Tux. All the penguins. What's up, IJB that boy? Thank you. It's good to be back. The Cloud Coach. Thank you so much. Hello. How are you doing today? What's up, Delarus? Welcome to the channel. Thank you. It has been a long week. I do have a couple of updates for you all, both good and bad. I think as all of you heard, I was planning on starting to stream up midweek last week. The reason I didn't is because our stream savior, our stream helper, the dog that protected us from the stream, unfortunately, she lost her battle to cancer last Sunday. And so we took the time to, to appreciate her. We took the time to, actually grieve so that we could continue to move on fine. So when everyone is going to bed tonight, send one up and thank her for all of the amazing help she did while we were streaming. But yeah, so that was tough, but we took some time to, to handle that. But now we're back, we're back with some better things. We're back with some really cool stuff. What we're doing tonight is called an excursion. I'm happy to introduce you guys all to the excursions, which are shorter than our normal. I don't know if anyone has read the site, but these are going to be shorter than our normal journeys. So we have journeys, which are our really 24-week courses, but 3 8-week sessions for each level: apprentice level, journeyman level, advanced level. We're running a couple of different ones. We're running one for software development. We're running one for cloud computing. There will be one for web development. And there is one also for called Pipelines for DevOps and SRE, kind of the more infrastructure automation side of things. More information about that tonight as well. But these shorter excursions are going to be an opportunity to really dive into the specific tools and topics that we use to be great along those journeys. And I think that it'll be pretty beneficial. I think a lot of times we don't get to spend a lot of times diving into the little nitty-gritty tidbits of the stuff that we're learning, and this will give us all of the foundational things that we need. I contacted you a while back about doing collaboration here on Twitch. We should definitely I'll check for that, Cloud Coach. I'm really bad at my messages. I'll be getting a lot better. That's another announcement tonight. Where's my phone at? I want you all to let's see if it actually does this time. 50. It's not gonna auto. It's not gonna autofocus, but 56 days. In 56 days, I will no longer be terrible at responding to messages because I will have time to respond to messages. So, just a little bit longer. But Cloud Coach, I will reach out. I'll definitely reach out. I'm always interested in collabs, especially, like I said, now that I'll have more time. What's up, Tonini? What's up? I love the names. New names always excite me. First time here. Excellent. I'm glad you found me through Live Coders. Live Coders are dope. I love the Live Coders community. I'm glad you were able to find us, and I appreciate it. I do appreciate it. She's been sick. She was sick since the beginning of the year, so it wasn't a surprise. It was something that we have been preparing for all year. Surprisingly, bittersweet. She was definitely in a little bit of pain, a lot of pain actually. So it was nice to, it's nice to know she's no longer in pain. But the joys and pain of pet ownership, I'm sure many of you have been there as well. But yeah, other updates on that. So I'm going to share this a lot of times. This is going to upset people. I'm also going to share it on social media. We are not restarting, unfortunately, for a number of reasons. We're not restarting pipelines until September 5th, September 1st or September 5th. Again, mostly these are due to time constraints, and just trying to fit everything in and to make sure that I was able to give you all the the energy that I think you all deserve for something like that. So we'll actually start it all the way over, but it'll actually be significantly different. So I'm sorry, I know, but I will also say this. All of the other courses, every single one of the other courses is actually going to feed into pipelines now. And it's going to be pretty interesting. There's going to be a little bit of convergence, so that if you are participating in more than one, there'll be a little bit of familiarity as you dive into a new topic. It'll still be touching something that you've already touched in one of the courses, and I think it'll make it a little more comfortable. So hopefully that'll be fun. But all that aside, tonight we are going with Waddle, Foundations in Linux, 6-part excursion. And I'm excited about this one. I love this one because I can't tell you how integral Linux is to the technology sector, how important it is to get the command line concepts down, and that's mostly so. This 6-part excursion is not going to be just command line stuff. We're going to be doing pretty much everything via the command line, but this really is going to be a deep dive into Linux, how it works. So we're going to be learning more than just your basic commands. We're going to understand how to really administer Linux systems. And why would you want to do that? Let's say, hey, I'm not a systems administrator. One, you're going to want to do this because if you're going to be interacting with Linux systems no matter what you're doing in the tech space, most likely. Two, it'll give you a much better understanding about how to get things done that you want to get done as you're moving through your journeys in your career. And it's going to allow you to it's going to give you a lot of tools and a lot of understanding, as you're building applications. I think understanding how the underlying system that's going to be running your applications is going to work is very, very important as well. And so, first things first, let's stop this first. And let's go into the, let's head over to the website and just take a look at what we're gonna be looking at over the next 3 weeks. Simple 3 weeks. This is gonna be Monday and Wednesdays for the next 3 weeks. Probably not 2.5 hours, probably around 1.5 hours to 2 hours. A little bit shorter. Like I said, these are shorter courses, but we will get to cover a lot. Some of the nights will be a little bit longer. And so Waddle, Foundations in Linux, we'll start tonight with a general overview of what Linux is, get you introduced to different distributions and kind of understanding what those really are. We'll introduce you to virtualization. Now, this is not inherently Linux, but a lot of times when you're dealing with Linux, when you're installing Linux, it'll be in a virtualized manner. So it's important that you know what that is, and we'll be using virtualization to install Linux. Maybe have a lot of different options for you tonight to be able to follow along with this. You actually don't have to install Linux to go along with this course. If you have a Mac, you're probably fine for most of it. There will be a couple things that you can't quite do, or can't quite do, that'll be a little bit different. But if you're on Windows and you have access to the Windows subsystem for Linux, I'll be showing you how to get there as well, if you need to do that, because that's really good for us. But I'll give you my recommendations on what to do. Then we'll be diving into the file system, and we'll dive into the command line, and we'll start getting those command line skills down. We'll start learning how to navigate properly, make sure we know what's going on there. We'll go all over installing packages from source, managing processes and things. So if you've been through the Horizons course, maybe not the Horizons course, the original DevOps, Introduction to DevOps course, we went through probably till about here. We'll probably cover these things, but we'll go much more deep. Like we kind of just touched on everything, but we didn't go really deep and get really comfortable with these things. We're gonna go a lot deeper and get really comfortable with these things because we have a little bit of extra time. We'll start talking about things like system startup. So how do you make things start up at launch? How do you how do you configure things properly? We'll talk about networking, a bunch of other stuff, and then we'll do some bash scripting. So you will not be a Linux expert after this, but I think you will have a really good understanding of how Linux works, how you can use it, how you can get around using it. And like I said, we'll be diving pretty deep into these things, much deeper than we have in the past. Also, if you're interested, this is the one that people are a little more interested in, but I decided to do the Linux one a day ahead just in case you're interested in the Docker one, people are very interested in containers and Docker. This will start tomorrow. This will be Tuesdays and Thursdays. But you know, you need to have some command line skills to be able to get through this one. And so I think this one, you know, we won't start doing anything real command liney until Thursday. So I think it'll give you just enough time to get a little bit comfortable, at least if you're trying to do both of these at the same time and you're completely inexperienced in both. But either way, should be fun, should be approachable. Don't sweat it. All right, also what we're doing this time a little bit differently. If you do !Waddle, it's gonna give you a link to a Notion page this time. And so we're not doing Google Classroom here just because this is a smaller course. And what you can do is you'll see that there's a day one section here. You can simply click on that day one section. And so every time we have a new day will pop up on this page. So you can save this link right here if you want it. A new day will pop up and you will have access to everything that you need. The top one being the slides. Please click into the slides and make sure you have access to them. I'm pretty sure you should. But let me know if you do not have access. You should have access to the slides. Then you'll have some recommended links here that I like to provide to you. Some recommended reading and some recommended viewing for anything. So this is just where all the information will be as we kind of go along. Solely weekday nights for the next 6 weeks. Perfect. I'm glad to have you with me. Like I said, I think it'll be fun. I think we'll get through a lot. And I think these two topics are really good bang for your buck topics. Like spending 3 weeks diving into these can pay extreme dividends. So I think it'll be fun. So let's hop right into the slides, because again, the goal is not to take up all of your time. It's just to take up a little bit of your time and talk about Waddle, foundations in Linux. I should have hit my little button, my little FX button over here. Waddle, foundations in Linux, but you know, I wasn't, you know, we'll find a better time to hit it, because you know, it wasn't feeling that one in the way that I should. So very simple tonight. What are today's topics? And you can see our slides are just a little bit different, you know, not extra fancy, but a little bit different, a little bit cleaner, just a little bit. But you know, my goal is to still teach everyone through memes and GIFs, so those will never go away. So fasten your seatbelts. Today we're going to learn a little bit about what Linux is. We'll do a distribution deep dive, introduction to virtualization. We'll talk about dual booting just a bit. And then we'll talk about Linux installation and other options to get you ready for the remainder of this course, just to make sure you have a way to touch Linux as we're kind of going through this. So let's hop right into it. One, what is Linux? All right, now this is where it gets a bit convoluted, but I got some bullet points over here that we'll start with and we'll dive deeper. So FOSS, Linux is a free and open source operating system, and you'll see this a lot, free and open source. That's a big reason why a lot of people like Linux, and we're about to talk about what free and open source means. Well, let's talk about that now. So free and open source, it means that no individual or company owns this piece of software. It is a community driven software. So you can go see the source code for Linux right now. We can head over to the GitHub repo and see the source code for Linux. If we would like to make contributions, we can go ahead and contribute to it, but no one owns that source code. Yeah, and it's free to use. The licensing of it, it's free and open for you to use and to modify to a certain extent. I believe Linux is maybe completely modifiable, but it's free for you to use, to modify, to do what you would like with, which is really nice. Unlike any software you may pay for licensing. Yeah, it's kind of nice. There's a lot of software like this in the industry that really props up the tech industry, and we can talk about more of that as well. But it's a Unix-like operating system. And it was really born out of the GNU project. GNU is it's a recursive acronym, which stands for GNU is not Unix. So Unix is another operating system. It is very similar to Linux. That's Linux is Unix-like, but it is a proprietary operating system. You do have to pay licensing fees. It is not free and open source. And the goal of the GNU project, I forgot what GNU stands for. Some people will pronounce it GNU. I say GNU because it's weird saying GNU. But GNU Linux was to create a free and open operating system that people could take and extend and contribute to. You know, that is not Unix. So you can dive into that a little bit more. It's not super important that you really understand that. There are a lot of Linux schnobs out there who will bring this up, so I want you to be aware of it if anyone brings it up with you, but we're not diving deep into that at all. Not important, doesn't help you use it any better, but you know, the history of it is important. It was created by a guy named Linus Torvalds, and we've said this before, but he's probably made the two of the biggest contributions to the technical industry, which is one, Linux, and the other one is Git. He created both of those technologies. Well, he didn't create Linux, but the Linux kernel, as we know it, was kind of written by Linus Torvalds. We'll talk about the kernel in a second, but it's really just a kernel. Yes, it's just a kernel for the most part. There's a lot of software and things that work with it to make it a lot better, but it's really just a kernel. So you might say, all right, this guy just started talking about GNUs and started talking about some dude named Linus and a kernel. What the heck is a kernel? I think this is the most important piece here. And Red Hat did a really good job of describing a kernel, and so I just took their definition as is, gave them credit there at the bottom. You know, I'm not a thief out here, but the Linux kernel, it's the main component of a Linux operating system. So like I said, it's really just the kernel, or it's the main component, but it's the main piece of the Linux operating system, and is the core interface between a computer's hardware and its processes, and that's the main piece. So what is the computer hardware? The computer hardware is the processor, it's the brain of the computer, it's the RAM, it's the hard drives, the actual, you know, all the things in that laptop, all the things, you know, in that tower for your desktop. That's the hardware, and the Linux kernel allows, it's the kind of communication layer between the software and your hardware. It communicates between the two, managing resources as efficiently as possible. The kernel is named so because, like a seed inside of a hard shell, it exists within the OS and controls all the major functions of the hardware, whether it's a phone, laptop, server, or any other kind of computer. And so that's why they call it a kernel. It sits inside of a hard shell. I always think popcorn. That is why I put this over here. You know, kernel is corn. 100. What's up, Pylang? Good to see you. But yes, that's all it really is. It is just this main engine, really, that allows the hardware and the processes and the software really to talk to each other, so that they can perform tasks efficiently. And that's all that is. All right, so all you need to know about Linux, again, just a little recap here. It's a free and open source operating system. Free and open source is a big key piece of this. Again, free and open source means nobody owns it. It's owned really by the community. Anyone can contribute to it. You can also use this software as you wish. You can modify it as you wish. Yeah, it's free and open source. And again, it's a Unix-like operating system, you know, created by Linus Torvalds, and it's really just this kernel. So is the kernel that it's partitioned when using Docker or a VDI? No. Nope. So Docker doesn't. Docker uses the underlying host kernel, host machine's kernel. That's why they're kind of small and quick. Those partitions, when using Docker or VDI, are really just more used for namespacing and for splitting off different pieces of the system that need to be isolated for those things in particular. For VDI, for like a virtual like disk image, maybe the kernel may be installed on there. Really, that's just going to be a disk partition for you to do whatever you want with. So maybe there could be a kernel on there, but not so much for Docker. Okay. When you dive into Linux, one thing you'll talk about a lot is distributions. The deeper and deeper you get into Linux, the more and more you'll know about these. And yeah, distributions. But distributions, that's what they're called. Or distros for short. So what is a distro? What is a distribution? Linux distros are basically just a collection of tools and software packaged together to provide a certain experience. Now, you might say, hey, what does that mean? Remember, we said Linux is just it's really just the kernel. The main thing that makes up Linux is just that kernel, that little engine, that thing that allows the hardware and the processes, you know, to talk to each other to perform tasks efficiently. But what you can do is you can create versions of Linux. You can create your own distribution or version of Linux that has specific software and specific tools packaged up and bundled in, again, to provide a certain experience. So maybe I want to make a distribution that's really good for productivity, and I want to add in all of the tools and all the applications that will allow me to do, you know, document editing and slides and Excel type things, and you know, all of those things. I can package up all the software and the tools and things that make it easy to do those things, that make it efficient to do those things into one distribution, and provide that to people. Because again, Linux is free and open source, so people can take that kernel, build on top of it, and deliver you know, a piece of software with a certain experience. Besides the kind of software and the tools, the next biggest kind of thing that is associated with these distributions for desktop environments, at least, is desktop environments. So there are some looks and some feels, and there's some operational workflows in which you can set up to be able to manage your computer and to be able to interact with your computer. And these desktop environments allow you to do that. There's a bunch of them. We're actually going to go over those a little bit later. There's also a whole video down here about desktop environments. This first one is about desktop environments, and so I think it's going to be it's a preference thing, to be 100% honest. But again, distributions, there are a bunch of different ones here. Some that you may have heard of are Red Hat, or Fedora, or Ubuntu, or Debian, or Arch Linux. There's a bunch of them, and basically they provide a different suite of tools, a different suite of software that allows you to do certain things, you know, more easily. And the people who are in charge of them are the ones who decide which software goes in there and is packaged in there. So that's all a distribution is. Anybody can make a distribution. You can make your own distribution if you would like. There are hundreds or thousands out there, so it can be tough to choose from. There's also a video that kind of just goes over some of the main ones and how you may choose those. Now, any questions so far before we dive into this very complicated timeline of Linux distributions? We're not diving deep into it at all, but it is good to kind of take a look at it, so you can start to see like how many there are and how they kind of branch off. Yes, good old DistroWatch. I haven't been to DistroWatch in so long. I used to live here. I used to live on DistroWatch. Yes, head over to DistroWatch if you want, like after we're done here. And you can kind of keep an eye on different distributions and how popular they are and things like that, and find out about updates and things like that. So DistroWatch is cool, but as you can see, not the most visually pleasing site. I used to not mind it, but having not been on it in a while, it is pretty jarring to see it look like this, to be honest. But yeah. What's up, Easy Life for me? Good to have you. Good to see you. Welcome to the channel. All right, so we talked about those different distributions, and so here is the GNU Linux project. This is where Tux the penguin came out of. Oh yes, I did not put a slide in here for this, but the reason this is called Waddle is because penguins, they do waddle, but people say that they waddle because actually a group of penguins on land is actually called a waddle. And right now we are a group of penguins on land learning about Linux, and we are waddling, and that's why it's called Waddle. I was actually really surprised. I was like, oh, what's a group of penguins called? And I googled it, and I was like, it would be Waddle. Like, a group of penguins seems like it would be called Waddle. They are called something different when they're in the water. I don't remember what they're called. Let's see. Group of penguins in water called. It's definitely something different. And it's a raft. So if we were all to get into the water, we would be a raft. But yeah, I was surprised to find that out. That was pretty interesting. Now I know more about penguins than I ever thought I would know. So yeah, penguin facts, you know. D-Flare. So I hate these keycaps. So my custom build is at work right now. I'm using a Frankenstein keyboard. It's got keycaps from everywhere right now, like from leftover from different things. These are MX Browns, and because I've moved over to the Zelios V2s, these Browns are not cutting it for me at all. But you know, it's it'll have to do. I can't build a new keyboard right now because it takes so long to get anything from China, and you know, you just got to make do with what you got. But I guess that makes me feel better about it. Maybe I will keep this keyboard around for a little while. But okay, so we have the start of the GNU Linux project over here to the left, and you can see all of these branches. Remember, Linux is free and open source. People can take it, people can extend it. And what people decided to do is they had different ideas on the direction, the things that they wanted to focus on. So some of these distributions are focused on lots of different things. Some are focused on stability. Some are focused on, you know, rolling releases and making sure you get the newest, greatest software out as fast as possible. Some of them are focused on security, things like Kali Linux, Parrot Linux, some of them are focused on gaming. There's ones that are focused on gaming. There's actually ones that are focused on media and multimedia. But yeah, so there's just a bunch. But the main branches you want to look at right here, or that I want to call out, are this top one here for Debian, and kind of this branch way up here, because this is just where I would say that 85% of the Linux population falls into one of these camps. So Debian, something in the Debian realm, or something down here in the Red Hat realm. So you've probably heard of Red Hat because Red Hat is a big company. You might say, oh, Red Hat's a big company. How are they making, you know, they make Linux. I thought Linux was free and open source. Yes, all Red Hat does is they do not charge you for Linux itself. They develop their own enterprise version of Linux, their own suite of tools and things, but they charge you for support. They do not charge you for they don't charge you for the software itself. They're charging you for support, but you can't really get it without that support, and it kind of sucks if you don't have that support. But we'll talk about some ways around that in a little bit. But there's a bunch down here of distributions that are based off of kind of Red Hat's ideals, and then there was up here that are based off of Debian's. Oh, excuse me. Wow. Then there are a bunch in the middle here, a ton in the middle that fall under all kinds of things. There's Arch Linux in here. There's a bunch of stuff, and you can go crazy trying to figure out where you want to go, what you want to use. I've used a lot of these. Maybe not. There's a lot in the middle that I don't even use, but there's a lot of them. But that's kind of the camps. There's a Debian camp. There's a Red Hat camp. There's an Arch Linux camp. There's a few SUSE users, not really here. Well, in the States, I'm in the United States. OpenSUSE and SUSE is not really that big of a distribution. But I think it's a pretty big enterprise distribution. I think specifically in the UK. But it's pretty popular as well. If you have used Windows Subsystem for Linux, you might have seen that that's one of the prominent distributions you have available to you. But yeah, Gentoo, yes, yeah. I mean, the Gentoo stuff would fall into the Arch camp, even though it's a little more ill. But yeah, Germany loves SUSE. Yeah, I mean, I've used it. It's fine. Yeah, it's fine. But again, the reason why you would end up falling into a camp is because, again, you start to get comfortable using a suite of tools. You come to expect certain things to be there. And again, you start to like certain distributions because of what they provide kind of out of the box. Most in other operating systems or other distros. Yes, you can install them sometimes, most of the time, but sometimes you can't either. But yeah, so you get a distro based off the tools that are included. I generally would, yes, based off the tools that are included, or its compatibility with things that you need. And so this is where, a lot of enterprises follow along this Red Hat line, because again, Red Hat is an enterprise company and they support enterprises. So a lot of these distributions support a lot of tooling, a lot of software that comes standard in Red Hat based distributions, or is more compatible with Red Hat based distributions. One being, so I'm getting into content creation now, and so there's some video editors, DaVinci Resolve, we talked about this before a little bit, but they say they support Linux. They say, we're one of the only, premium, studio grade production software that supports Linux, but they only support a single version of Red Hat Linux, really CentOS, but of Red Hat Linux. And so you got to look at these things too when you're choosing these things as well. Different drivers, a lot goes into it, but they tout this. It ain't all Linux. It's specific tooling that exists inside of Red Hat or CentOS Linux. So again, think about the tools that you're going to be using, things that you need to worry about compatibility with. Yeah, and so most of the time when you're talking about dev tools and things like that, those are going to be standard across the board. But if you're an enterprise organization, or you're going to be doing things for an enterprise organization, this is probably where you're going to want to go. But if you're someone who's using Linux desktop for your own needs, you're probably actually going to want to go, up through the Debian route. So like a lot of the Debian distributions, Ubuntu, Pop! OS, provide a lot of good stuff for Steam. So if you play games, you can get Steam support really easily. You can do that in some of the other ones, but like there's a lot of tools and things that are packaged up for Debian a little bit better. So yes, think about tooling when you are doing that. Doc Jones, why is Arch so popular with some developers? So they're masochists. Yes, that's part of it. Two, it's because a lot of times when devs are working on things, they only care, so Arch generally is a distribution that's going to give you kind of the bare minimum, and you get to create the experience that you want. So it's really a distribution that allows you to kind of create your own distribution out of it. And so you have to install all of the things that you need, all the things that you want. It doesn't really come with anything out of the box. And so a lot of times, less is more when you need a stable machine. And so, yeah, I mean, whether or not it's better, again, preference, but that's usually why. And a little bit of masochism in there, but for sure. But yeah, you've only used Ubuntu. Ubuntu is great. I do think Ubuntu is great. I think all of the distributions have their own merits. I've used a lot of them. We'll dive into what those merits are in a little bit. Waddle and Spiron went through a lot of distros back in the day. Absolutely. So that's another great thing about Linux distributions, about Linux period, is that it tends to be more efficient on weaker hardware. So if you have old desktops, old laptops, you can install Linux desktop versions on there. And I've done this with my parents and restored old computers. Keeps them from getting viruses as well. Not that you can't get viruses, it is just much more difficult in Linux to get viruses. You almost have to actively install the virus on there. But yeah, Linux is pretty cool for a lot of things. I would, after we've kind of have dived into this, I would explore, have a little fun, see what you like, see what you don't like. At first I was like, what, it's how can there be that many differences? There really are a lot of differences, even in terms of just the installation. Some of them really provide a much better experience than others. All right, so that's all we need to know about Linux and its history. You don't need to dive super deep. There's a ton you can learn about, again, about the history of Linux and where it came from and the path it's kind of taken, but not crazy important. Just wanted to touch on some light things about it. I do want you to really understand what a Linux distribution is, because you will be faced with a lot of different options for distributions, and it can be overwhelming. And the curiosity kind of sucks too. I can't tell you how many times I've taken down my main machine just because I wanted to try out a new distro, and was not able to get something on that distribution working, but it's all good. What version of Linux does Mac OS use? I'm not a Mac user, so Doc Jones, Mac does not use Linux. Mac uses Unix. Both Mac and Linux are Unix-like operating systems. They are not Unix. You legally can't say they are Unix because of, again, Unix's licensing and the way that Unix, the structure of Unix is. It's very close. They're very close. And that's the reason why developers tend to gravitate towards towards Macs, is because it provides you a lot of those Linux native Linux and Unix tools out of the box. It's fully Unix specified now. Yeah. Yep. But yeah, so it's not Linux, it is Unix. Yep. Pop OS is my favorite. 2004 Objectplex right now. It's definitely my favorite. I'm probably going to install that for desktop. And so yeah, I put that in here. I put some of the ones that I recommend here, you know, because I don't want to overwhelm you. I just, you know, if you want to go Debian based, you can do one of these. If you want to go Red Hat based, I think these are the better options. These are my recommendations. Again, feel free to do your own, but I'm also going to give you all easier ways to get up and running with Linux. Besides this is just mostly for tonight. But distributions that I would suggest if you are looking to use Linux as a desktop. So what you're looking at right now is my desktop, just like Windows or Mac. If you're looking to use it as a desktop and you're especially if you're a first time user, Ubuntu, well, Pop OS really, which is basically Ubuntu, but Ubuntu is what I would check out. Again, that link is in the things here. So I highly recommend using that. I think it's very user friendly out of the box. I think it's the most comfortable. If you're trying to learn how to do this for a job, you can do it with the desktop version of Linux 100%, but you do not have to install the desktop version of Linux for you to be able to learn how to use Linux. Generally, you'll be working inside of servers and systems. And so if you're going to be working inside of a server, I actually recommend this bottom one down here, because this is something which is CentOS, because this is what most organizations are going to be using. So I'm probably going to install this today, the desktop version of this and the server version of this, to kind of give you a little bit of a view there. All right, thank you so much for the gifted sub. I appreciate that. 2 gifted subs to the channel. Thank you for the support. All the emotes shared as well. Thank you very much for the support. Good to have you, El Ray. Thank you so much. All right, so let's talk about virtualization just a little bit. This is not Linux specific, but virtualization is pretty important. So this is my favorite GIF. I was gonna switch it up, couldn't switch it up because it's so good. I need to look up where it's from. I'm about to Google it, Viceland, and figure out if I can figure out the whole. I want to see this whole clip. But what is virtualization? And you've probably heard of the words virtual. You probably heard of virtualization before, but what is it? It's really OS inception. So operating system inception. It is an operating system inside of another operating system, maybe inside of another operating system, but it is the ability to run an operating system inside of another operating system, to virtualize a computer and all of its resources. So what are computing resources? Computing resources, again, are like your CPU, your memory, your disk space, things like that. And you need these things for a computer to be able to run. So that runs on your physical hardware. Virtualization is a way to emulate or create a virtual version of of hardware, and to be able to run an operating system along with it. So OS inception. Now this part's not super important, but I think it's good to know. I think it's really good to know as you're running through things, something good to keep in the back of your mind. But it runs via something called a hypervisor. And a hypervisor is a layer of software that allows you allows this virtualization to occur. So there's a layer, and there's 2 different versions here. I actually think there are more versions, but these are the most common ones. Maybe there aren't, I can't remember, but I know these are 2 I want you that you should care about. And type 1 and type 2, we have bare metal versus hosted. So again, the hypervisor is a piece of software. It's a layer that allows this virtualization to occur. It allows the computer to be able to basically create these virtual systems. And the bare metal, type 1 is bare metal. This is the type that's going to run on systems. Let me get a little bit of water here. So this is going to be the type that runs directly on the hardware. So a server is no different from your computer. It's no different from your laptop. It's just bigger. Yeah, it's all the same hardware. Whoa. Cloud Coach. Perfect timing, actually, but thank you for the 10 gifted subs. 10 gifted subs always get you VIP here. We tell everyone that. Thank you so much for the support. I will definitely be hitting you up about that collab, Cloud Coach. I'm pretty sure Cloud Coach is a streamer as well. I'll also give you a little shout out here. But thank you so much for the support. Really does help us continue to do all the stuff that we try to do here. I really do appreciate you. I appreciate the community. Whoa. But yes, bare metal runs closest to the metal. This is where basically the operating system of the server is actually the hypervisor. It's actually the hypervisor software. So generally, when you think of a computer, you think of, you know, your laptop. It's got all the hardware, and you install an operating system over top. So maybe maybe that's Mac OS, maybe that's Linux, maybe that's Windows. This type 1 hypervisor would basically say, hey, there's no, you know, there's no Windows here. The thing that would be Windows is going to be the hypervisor. And so there are a bunch of things here. There's VMware, there's ESXi for that. There's Zen. There's a bunch of different ones that you can have, but they run right on the system. That is the operating system is this hypervisor basically. And so this allows for the most performance out of these two hypervisors. It basically says, hey, I'm going to use this entire server to be able to virtualize instances, and from there you can start to create smaller computers inside of that bigger computer. So maybe I have a large computer with 10 cores, maybe it has 10 core or 12 cores, maybe it has 12 cores, 12 CPU processors, and it has 128 gigs of RAM and a terabyte of disk space. And what you can start to do is say, all right, I want four different virtual computers, each with 2 cores. So split up the cores and give me 2 virtual cores, and split up the RAM and give me 8 gigabytes of RAM on each of those, and give me, you know, 200 gigabytes of disk space. And so it allows you to take the hardware, the physical hardware, and it allows you to start divvying it up into these smaller virtualized computers. Imagine an entire apartment building, and inside of each apartment inside of an apartment building are a bunch of units, and all of those units have all the capabilities of the entire building. So they all have water running to them. They have their own bathrooms, they have their own kitchens, they have their own bedrooms. And so, you know, instead of having one big house, one giant house in that apartment building, you're gonna split that up into a bunch of smaller living quarters that are all self-contained, that have everything that you need. And so that's kind of what bare metal is. Hosted is very similar. Hosted is very similar, but the difference here is that whereas bare metal, there's no operating system like Windows or Mac or anything. Hosted is what we're going to be doing today, and if you follow along with the way that I'm going to be doing it, you're going to be doing it this way. But it's where you're installing a hypervisor, you're installing a piece of software inside of an operating system, inside of a host operating system. So I'm running Windows right now. This type of virtualization will be me installing a piece of software inside of Windows, which would then allow me to virtualize computers. This is a little less efficient. Why? Because I'm running an entire underlying operating system, and I'm not able to utilize all of the computer's resources in the way that I would be able to do using bare metal. And again, because Windows has to now manage this, it's a little bit less efficient, or Mac or Linux, a little bit less efficient, a lot less efficient actually. But yeah, these are the two types. Yeah, these are just the two types. Not crazy important for you to memorize, but I want you to be aware that there are different types of virtualization. And in that virtualization, you create these things called virtual machines. And again, each of these running instances of a computer is a virtual machine. And containers is there with a star. You can use containers. Containers themselves are not virtualization, but you can use containers to do virtual computing. So it can get a little confusing, but I do like to throw that in there so that people can start to explore. Hopefully it lights a little fire of curiosity so that you can start to check that out. I am not using WSL2 on this computer, and I'll show you why right now. I'm not using it on this computer because, well, that's problematic for one. This is not loading, but It is not available for my desktop because of some incompatibilities with some of the things that are currently broken, and I do not want to, because I use this computer for a lot, I do not want to manually update. It is on my laptop though. My laptop is using WSL2 and I love it. I am using WSL1 on here, which works well as well, but we'll dive into that in a little bit. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the virtualization software that you can use. Again, these are type 2 virtualization softwares that you can install right on your computer. Whether you have Windows, Mac, or Linux, you can install these. So VirtualBox is the one that I recommend. It is why do I recommend it? It is a free and open source type 2 hypervisor. Again, it is running inside of your operating system. So yeah, so it's type 2, not type 1, but it's also free and open source. Oracle owns them and is kind of managing that thing. You can create as many guest OSs as your computer can handle. So what's a guest OS? And actually, a guest OS is Windows or whatever is my main computer's operating system. It's what's called my host OS. It is the host operating system that's going to hold everything else. Guest OSs are the operating systems that are being virtualized. So if I installed 5 different Linux distributions here, each of those Linux distributions would be a guest OS. You can create as many of those as your computer can handle, as long as you have space, as long as you have the resources available. You can create whatever, as many as you would want. And it's great because it supports Linux, Windows, and Mac for the host OS. So it pretty much covers everybody for you to be able to use as a type 2 hypervisor if you would like. It's also pretty user friendly. It's really nice. So you can download VirtualBox and use that. I provided another option, which is VMware Player. I'm not going to download it right now, but it is something that you can use, or VMware Workstation Player, which is free from VMware. But VirtualBox does everything that I've never had. Well, I've had issues with it, but that's because virtualization can be a little bit finicky. But these are things that would have caused me problems probably in VMware Player as well. But VirtualBox has been pretty handy dandy. It's pretty tried and true. A lot of people use it. A little fire of curiosity so you can watch Docker tomorrow. Yes, 100%. Going through setting up something like this and then diving into Docker will really be a good comparison there. Just kind of see the differences. It'd be kind of nice. But yeah, VirtualBox with Vagrant is great. Yes, Vagrant is phenomenal. We are going to touch on Vagrant. We are actually going to touch on Vagrant. I think I didn't put it on there. I think it's the second to last class. We'll be touching on Vagrant. Might be worth mentioning hardware acceleration and how it needs to be turned on in the BIOS for some setups. So this is true. This is true if you want to use hardware acceleration. Hardware acceleration can cause a lot of problems. We ran into a little bit of that recently. But yes, if you want to use hardware acceleration, it does need to be enabled in your BIOS. We'll talk about BIOS. We'll talk about all that stuff during the installation phase, which we're going to hit shortly. What's up, Road Cow? How you doing? Good evening. Good to have you. Welcome. Yeah, hardware acceleration for me does not, it's hit or miss. It's really hit or miss whether or not it works fine. And I'll try to spin up one of my existing ones and show you, but also I don't know what my BIOS settings are, so I might need to mess around with some of that stuff. We are we're just learning, Roadcow, we're just learning a little bit about Linux. So we're doing a 6-part series, diving into like a Linux deep dive, really getting our foundations right in Linux. And so tonight we're just talking about Linux, kind of what it is. And yeah, we're gonna get it installed tonight, or I'm gonna give you a few other options on using it. You do not have to install Linux, but this is just, seeing Linux being installed, I think is going to be valuable. But yeah, that's what we're gonna be doing tonight. I'm just kind of talking about some concepts around Linux, but this is night 1 of 6. But yeah, another thing that you can do if you don't want to do it virtually, so let's be clear here. Your computer is going to be the resources on your computer are going to be the deciding factor on whether or not you're going to be able to effectively virtualize a a Linux machine or any kind of machine, because again, it is utilizing the resources on your computer. The resources are finite. And so, you know, if you're already utilizing many of your computer's resources, this may not be the right option for you. But it's just a common way of doing things. Again, virtualization is huge in the industry, especially as you are getting into your jobs and things. All this, you know, most servers, I would probably say most servers are virtualized, and you'll definitely run into virtualized instances of servers, and just understanding what that is important. But you don't need to do that. You don't need to do this to learn Linux as we're running through it. But if you want to dive all the way in, a little more dangerously, you can do something called dual booting. I did this for years. I may actually go back to this now, maybe. And what this allows you to do is to run both Linux and Windows on your computer, to run 2 operating systems. You can actually run more, so you can triple boot, you know, quad boot, whatever. But what it allows you to do basically is to partition your hard drive. So split up your hard drive and install different operating systems on each of those partitions, and then use something called a bootloader to be able to select which operating system you want to use when the computer boots up. So that's the only time you can choose, when the computer boots. So if you're in Windows currently, if you want to get into Linux, you must restart the computer, and on startup it'll give you an option to say, hey, I would like to use Linux, and you can choose Linux instead. And when you want to switch back, you have to reboot. It's a good option. It does eat up a bit of your hard drive. You know, having a big hard drive is kind of nice, especially on laptops, because of the way the partitions work, and because the underlying file systems are completely different, and it can cause some issues when trying to access files from each. It's possible though. But yeah, if you want to have the best of both worlds, you can do dual booting. I do not recommend this. I do not recommend doing this on, especially if it's your first time on a computer that you care about, with, you know, that has things that you need. Try this on an older computer, or make sure that the stuff that's on your computer now, you don't really care about it. You don't mind losing it, because you probably will lose it the first time trying to do this. Especially with newer computers, and there's something called UEFI, and the way that you boot these things can be really problematic. And it generally works better if you have Linux installed first, because Linux, a lot of Linux distributions install that bootloader by default. But yeah, definitely do not do this if I want you to know it's an option for you. And again, I want to pique your interest. I want to give you the information. I would watch a bunch of videos on it, but do not do this on your main computer. Do not do this on any computer you can't have down and out, because you'll probably end up down and out. Not recommend dual booting either. Yeah, you can. I agree. Buy a cheap, you know, computer to run Linux on 100%. I agree. Or getting yourself a little server. But yeah. Install a hypervisor first. Yeah, frequency hop, that works as well. But yeah, just something good to know about. I did this for years. It was perfect for me. There was a period of time where I used Linux for everything except for gaming, and I would boot into Windows to game, and all I had installed in Windows were my games. And I did everything else in Linux, and that worked really well. But again, Linux is so important that Windows has delivered Windows 10 with a Linux kernel inside of it. So you no longer need to do that. So I'm kind of, you know, it's a weird space right now. Someone who's used Linux for so long to be actually coming away from it to really dive deeper into Windows. It's really weird, really odd, but you know, having one operating system also is kind of nice, to be 100% honest. But yeah, what's up, She-Boss? No biggie. You saw that you would watch every single one. All good. Thank you, Potlicker, so much for the gifted sub. She-Boss, please thank Potlicker for the gifted sub. Thank you for the support. But yeah, it's all good. We just talked a little about Linux. There's some slides. There's a whole Notion page if you want to grab it from this link, She-Boss, so you can see what's there. And you can get to the slides that we're at now. It's a little Notion page right here that'll give you some links and some things you can use to catch up. But we haven't started installing anything, so the hard part is not there. So perfect. Like I said, each of these will not be like the journeys. The journey courses are like 2.5 hours each. This one, these should all be about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. So we're gonna do some installation through VirtualBox just to show you what a it'll give you an idea of what Linux installation looks like, because not only will it teach you how to do it on you know, through a hypervisor like this, even if you were installing it directly onto the system, it will take you through a very similar process. So it'll just give you an idea on what Linux installation looks like. A lot of people usually think it's really tough to install Linux. Some version of Linux, it is pretty tough to install, but you will see the Linux is a very nice modern operating system, and 100% is a completely usable daily driver of an operating system. You can use it to do everything, if you want, but you know, there's some, you know, it is a free and open source operating system. There's a lot of companies that do not support their applications inside of Linux, so that makes things tough. The only reason I don't use Linux full time is, one, the amount of Linux gaming is gotten a lot better, but the amount of games that are not available on Linux, and that video editing is awful on Linux. It's pretty bad, to be honest. Everything else I can do and have done, and prefer a lot of the other things on Linux. But really, video editing, I'm not even a good video editor, and I was not able to do what I needed to do. And gaming are the two big things. So, but development's great. Definitely. Yeah, so let's get this installed. Like I said, I'm using VirtualBox. Feel free to download VirtualBox. I already have it. I already have 2 OSs here. Yeah, we'll start this in a second. You do not need to do this if you are on Mac. If you're on a Mac, I would actually argue that you do not need to do. I don't think there's much that we're gonna do in this course that's that you won't be able to do from your Mac. I'm trying to think. The one big problem is that if you're completely unfamiliar with the command line, Mac has changed their default shell, so there's going to be some inconsistencies in the things that we're doing, but I can teach you how to do what we're doing and to get into the shell that we're doing things in, or we can also use ESH, to be honest, but nah, we use bash. But other than that, like, I think everything else is probably available. There might be a few little flags and things from commands that we enter later on in the course that may not work, but we'll see. She-Boss, thank you for coming back with the gifted sub. Oh man, the sharing. I love you all for sharing with each other. That's pretty dope. Thank you very much. Oh, if you're on Windows, you can use the Windows subsystem for Linux. And I actually highly encourage you to use this, even if you cannot get the second version. I highly recommend, if it's available, that you can do this. Now, the problem is, I think that this is only available to people with, I want to say you have to have, maybe this is not true. I want to say you had to have like the pro version of Windows or something for this to work. But I will add this into Notion really quick, because this is a good option. Let's add this into day one. Let's see, Windows subsystem for Linux, and we'll just paste this in. You can check that out. That should update immediately. Maybe refresh your page or something. But check that out. I would highly recommend it. What it's going to do is it's going to install a little virtualized Linux instance on your computer using something called Hyper-V. Now, I want to be clear. If anyone already has this installed, if you already have Windows Subsystem for Linux installed on your computer, you will not be able to use VirtualBox. I want to say I read something that says this has changed recently, but as far as I know, if you already have this set up, do not try to follow along with the VirtualBox installation because I do not think you can. I must be wrong because mine works. So maybe I lied. Make sure that your VirtualBox is up to date. I don't think I did anything to get this to work, but yeah, this used to not work because this VirtualBox was incompatible with Hyper-V, but maybe it is now. I don't know. WSL2 fixed that. Well, I have WSL1 and this works. Like I can use this. I don't know, but it used to be a problem. It used to be a big problem. If you wanted to use WSL, you'd have to, oh, sorry. Yes, I am thinking of Docker. I'm thinking of Docker desktop. I'm not thinking of WSL. You are right though, it's JFills. There were some incompatibilities here, but those have been solved. I am thinking of Docker for Windows and not WSL. So yeah. So what WSL is, again, it's a installation of Linux right here. So what we have right here is I'm running a version of Ubuntu right here in my Windows installation. You can see up top, there's a little penguin right here, and it's really nice. There's actually an Ubuntu like terminal itself, but I'm using the Windows terminal, which is really nice. If you're using Windows, I would download it. But it's pretty cool. But yeah, you can do that. There are some online options. My number one recommendation for this is to actually grab if you don't care about using Linux as a desktop, and you just want to start to learn the commands as we go through them and start understanding Linux, I highly recommend grabbing a server off of like DigitalOcean or Amazon, because it's something that you can use for a lot of things, and you can not worry about if it's going to mess up your stuff. Now it's going to cost you money. I think these are about $5 a month. It's the cheapest one, which would be more than enough. You just sign up and click, give me it's called a droplet. You just grab a droplet. I highly recommend using something like this or Linode. Yep, a little VPS or AWS Lightsail. I think Lightsail is only $350 for the first 3 months or something. Plan starting at $350 per month. Yeah, so AWS Lightsail is also one. It'll just give you a little Linux server that you can log into. And again, this will be, I have two options on the list here. Server and desktop. The desktop version is going to be the thing that's going to allow you to, actually use a local computer and to mess around and to, be able to see things with a graphical user interface. A server is just going to give you, there's going to be no graphical user interface. It's going to be just command line only. But that's basically all we're going to be using throughout all of this course. I'm only going to be using a desktop to kind of show you there's some visual ways to kind of teach you some of the things in the beginning that'll help see when you get to see it visually while we're doing it from the command line. But after that, this will all be done via the server, and so I do highly recommend grabbing one of these for yourself if you can spare a little bit of change. Yeah, but let's go ahead and let's see some Linux installation here. So this is VirtualBox, and unfortunately, actually, maybe I can make it larger. Display settings. This is gonna mess up my whole computer, but I'm gonna change the. Let's go 175. Ooh. All right, so a little bit better. All right, a little bit, you can see it a little bit better, but this is VirtualBox, and yours will not have these things in here. I do not think I have the latest version, but I think I have one of the newer versions in here. But I actually have two different versions of Linux set up. Yes, I do have 3 displays. Anything less would be uncivilized. I agree. And so I actually have 2 virtualized computing instances set up already. But you'll see a little thing like this. And then all you got to do to start setting up a new version, a new instance, is to click new. Now, I don't recommend, we're going to go through this. If you're going to go through this with me, I'm I might add a video to the list because there are a number of things you have to be there's a number of problems that you could run into when going through this. Most of it is because each computer is set up with some options in the BIOS that allows for certain things to happen. Some computers by default will not allow you to virtualize anything. Some computers by default will only allow you to virtualize 32-bit operating systems. There's a bunch of different settings that you can find all around, and it can sometimes it can be tough to figure out what settings you need to change to make this happen. Probably for 80% of you, none of that will be an issue. 80% of computers probably are kind of set up in a way where this will just kind of work. But the other 20% will probably have some issues. So don't sweat it if you run into some of these issues. I think that I'll add a couple of videos to that slide, which will help you troubleshoot some of those issues and to be able to get set up. And again, if all else fails, I don't want you to have to spend any money, but you might have to. You might have to grab one of these because again, or reach out into the Slack. Maybe we can work through some problems. Maybe we can help you out because again, a lot of times these things can be hard to track down. But you go ahead and click new, and it'll start to give you the space to create a new virtual machine. And it says it right here, create a virtual machine, and you can give it a name. I can call it whatever I want. Now, before we get started here, for you to be able to do this, you would first have to have downloaded one of them. So I gave you the link. Did I find my link? I gave you the link for some things. I already have these downloaded. They're generally pretty large. They're usually over 1 gig in size, or a lot of the common ones are over 1 gig in size for desktop. Pop! OS is the one that I prefer. I already have a downloaded ISO for this. The files that they're downloaded are called ISO files. You used to have to burn them to CDs. If you would like to install it directly on your computer, you probably need to burn it to a USB drive. There's some ways to do that. I'll add a video for that as well, because I do think that's cool to know in case you have an old computer lying around and you want to install it. The installation is fairly straightforward, really nice nowadays. Used to be a lot tougher not so long ago, but it's pretty easy. But you do need to download this, and it does take a little bit to download if you do not have super fast internet. But I do have one of each of these, and we'll get going real quick. So I do already have a Pop! OS installed, but we'll do a brand new one here, and I will give it a name. So I'm gonna call this, Waddle, and make it as descriptive as you want. Just this is for you and you only. And then it's gonna ask you where you want to place this thing. And so it's asking you for a place on your computer where the information for this computer is gonna be, this virtual machine is gonna be saved. Remember, this is going to be a virtualized computing instance, so it's going to share the rest of your resources. So the files and things that are saved, they're going to be saved to the same to the same hard drive that Windows is using, and so or that is a part of your cluster of hard drives, and so you can choose where you want that to be. Default is fine. I don't really care. You can put it on a different hard drive if you have more space elsewhere, but then you tell it what type you're installing. So I could be installing Windows on here if I wanted, or Mac OS, or BSD, which is Unix, but I'm going to be installing Linux right here. So you're going to click the drop down and choose Linux. You can choose other if you want as well. I think they both work. And then there's a drop down here, and there's a couple different types of Linux. And so these are different distributions. And the reason why these things are here is, again, distributions are packaged and bundled with certain tools and things. If you get it wrong, it's generally not a problem for the most part, but it can be. But there are a bunch of options here. There's Debian 6432, Ubuntu, and Pop! OS are derivatives of Debian. So these will be fine. But I'm actually going to choose the Ubuntu option. There's no Pop! OS option. I'm going to choose this Ubuntu option because it's the closest to what I want to use. And you can do a little Googling to find out which one is which yours is based off of. But I'm going to choose Ubuntu 64-bit because I downloaded the 64-bit version of this ISO. That's most of the time that's what you're going to have downloaded as well. What's up, Callow? How you doing? Shout out to Callow Creation. Callow's a dope streamer, does a lot of cool Twitter bot stuff. We're over there. I'm over there a lot. It's pretty chill. It's pretty fun stream to kind of check out. So welcome. Glad you stopped through. We are just getting some Linux installed on here. Is Pop! OS based on Debian Ubuntu? Yes, Pop! OS is based on Ubuntu. And so for anyone who doesn't know what Pop! OS is, there is a Linux laptop maker named System 76. They are a pretty cool company. I do own a System 76 laptop. No sponsorships, no nothing. I purchased it with my own money maybe 2 years ago. I've used it for almost everything for the past 2 years. And it's phenomenal. They basically have their own in-house team who makes drivers and things for their machines. It's pretty dope. Like, I highly recommend if you are doing Linux stuff and you know you want to use Linux, if you don't want to deal with the hassle of fighting with drivers. So if you were to install Linux on your laptop today, things might be mostly good. Everything will probably work out of the box, but historically you might have issues with the proper drivers for your Wi-Fi card or your Bluetooth card, or some piece of your computer may not work properly, your webcam. And that was always a hassle, and depending on your model of computer, you'd have to go find all these hacks and new drivers and all this other stuff. If you want your computer to work out of the box completely and them to be able to support it, System 76 is the way to go. I can't speak highly enough. Their support's amazing. Yeah, and Pop! OS is pretty great. They created this Ubuntu based distribution again to kind of just work on their systems, but they gave it to everyone as well. It's really stable, has a lot of extra nice tools for you to be able to use, but it's pretty cool. I highly recommend it for a desktop environment. It's really cool. It's got all the stuff that you might want to have on it. It's pretty dope, and so it has all the tools that you might think about. And so if you're someone who's like, would I want to use Linux as my desktop, check these things out: Steam and Chrome and Firefox and VS Code and Slack and and Spotify. Like, Linux is not this like weird hacker distro or operating system that doesn't have any tools. It's Dropbox. It's got all Discord. It's got the stuff that you're used to. So you can use it for just about everything. So yeah, this is what I recommend. So we'll install this real quick and then we'll do a server one as well. Down. All right, so after you get the right options in here, click next. Now you're gonna start to provision you're gonna start to tell your computer how many resources you want to give to this virtual machine. Now, this generally it'll get into the red zone when you're using up a little too much of, I think it's like 80% of your available RAM or whatever resources are. So it's going to ask, hey, how much memory do you want to provide to whoops, I hit escape. Don't hit escape. But how much memory do you want to provide to this thing? 1 resource, please. Yes, 1 resources, please. 2 resources, very please. Yeah, so you can choose those things here. The recommended memory size is 1024 megabytes. That is 1 gigabyte. And so I have a lot of RAM on my computer. I have 64 gigs of RAM on my computer. I do not need 64 gigs of RAM. One way you may want to choose this, if you're on Windows, go to Task Manager, and you can see what your computer is currently using. And so right now I'm using 25% of that memory. And so I may say, I might want to try to, give, I don't know, you can choose from there. If you can give it 2, I would give it 2, which is 2048. But I'm going to give this, I have a pretty beefy computer. I'm going to give this 8 gigs of RAM, just for fun. Because, like I said, because I can. And you're gonna click next. So not really super important. It's gonna affect the performance of the virtual machine, but again, Linux is actually pretty efficient. So it's especially on weaker hardware. So choose what you may. So the next thing, we just did memory. Now we're on to the hard disk. How much disk space do we want to give to this thing? And the recommended size of hard disk is 10 gigabytes. And so you can just leave it on create existing for now. There's some other options here. Don't worry about those right now. You just want to create a new one. and it'll automatically set it to 10 gigs, I believe, by default. And so it's going to give you some options. Leave everything default. So VDI is going to be the type of hard disk it's going to do, which is a VirtualBox disk image. Leave it there. Again, no need to change that right now. Click next. Leave it on dynamically allocated. So what this is going to do is it's going to basically set it up in a way where you can easily where one option is going to basically make it easier for you to make the hard drive bigger if you need to, and to extend that hard drive. So leave it on dynamically allocated for now. It's fine. And then you're going to get to choose your size. And so 10 gigs, you know, all the way up to however much you want to put on there. I'll leave it right at 10 gigs because it doesn't really matter. Now, this part is a little bit important because yes, you may put 10 gigs there, but once you partition the hard drive, once you install the operating system, it's going to cut it down by probably 3 gigs or so for Linux, depending on which distro you choose. And so you may put 10 gigs there, but after everything's installed, you might only have 7 available to you afterwards. So be careful with that. If you have disk space available, go ahead and give it however much you think you'll need. But again, this is just an example. And so that's everything that we've done now. So we've essentially told VirtualBox, hey, I want you to create I want you to virtualize, carve out space on the system that has these properties. So 8 gigs of RAM and, you know, 10 gigabytes of hard drive space. You know, carve out these things on the system for me to use. And when we're ready to use them, we will use them. So it's not going to use those resources while it's off. It's only going to use those resources while it's on, except for disk space. Disk space will get taken up by what you put on there. So even after you know, if you save a bunch of files to the machine, to the virtual machine, and you turn it off, it will still use up that disk space, but all the other resources will be unused. So that part can be a little bit confusing at times. There are more settings that we weren't presented there. So you can go in and change the settings if you want to add or change anything. So one thing I normally do is by default, so like those settings aren't set in stone. I can now, you know, add more memory or less if I want. But processor is the one that I generally add more. If you're going to be using this heavily, I would take the processor right up to the red line, to be 100% honest, if you think you're going to be using this a lot. But you know, I generally like to give it more than 1 core. I have a lot of cores. Well, I only have 16 cores, but 32 threads. I generally like to give it, you know, 25% of the green, to be honest. So I'm just gonna put it up there right now for now. But you don't need to change. You do not need to change that. I'm just showing you that there's some other options here. There's some video stuff you can change if you like, other storage options, but there's a bunch of options in here to configure the system how you would want to configure it. Not important that you know what they are, just letting you know that they're here. If you leave everything default, you'll be completely fine, and I recommend that you leave everything default, to be 100% honest. All right, so now all you're gonna do now is click start, and what it's gonna do is instantly we'll start to see my resources probably go up a bit. And what it's going to do is it's going to start to do this, and it's going to start up. And when you start up a system, especially when it's fresh, it's going to say, hey, I need you to I know that I'm a brand new virtual machine. I need to be able to boot off of something, and what we're going to need to do is boot it off of the ISO file that we downloaded. So that image that we downloaded of Ubuntu or Pop OS, we are going to need to go find that on our computer, and we are going to we're going to use that as this. So find it on your computer, choose that thing, find it wherever it is on your system, and that's what we're going to use to boot this off of. And once you find it and you click on it, just click start, and it's going to basically use that image to start to spin up. And this image is a live CD. If you're using a desktop distribution, it's a live CD. And what this live CD allows you to do is to run Linux without installing it. And so it allows us to do a bunch of stuff. I hate when this happens. I could control C it. I am going to control C it. It's going to run some checks. You should let it run checks. if you want to keep this around, it could cause problems if you don't. Normally it won't, but it's fine. We don't need to wait for it. And I thought I chose Pop OS. Did I not choose Pop OS? Either way, no, I'm gonna do, I'll leave it. I'm breaking everything. I'll leave it here. The Ubuntu installation and the Pop OS installation is very, very similar. The Pop OS one is a little bit better, a little bit cleaner, a little bit more comfortable. But yeah, you switch to Ubuntu because Pop had grayed out. All right, yeah, let me do that. Let me power this off. Let me switch it up. I do like the Pop OS installer a lot. System storage. Let's get rid of. Get out of here. Remove. Add a disk. All right, now this will work. I chose the wrong image, so now I'm choosing the Pop OS one. So now when it boots up, it's going to boot off of a different image because I told it to use a different file to basically boot up off of. But the Pop OS installer is really nice. I was really surprised. I was like, man, this is Pop OS is the type of distribution to really make non-techies switch into Ubuntu, to be honest. Like Pop OS is really nice, kind of out of the box. So I'll full screen this. And so you can see by default, you know, it's loading up. You know, we got this little thing in here. It doesn't really fill up the screen. You might say, oh, why is it so small? Why is the resolution so small? This is something that you'll probably run into by default, and we can change that. And so we can change it by right clicking, going to display settings and changing it here. And I'll make it a little bit bigger for now. Because there's a lot of drivers and things that get installed during installation. So I'll make it a little bit larger. And so this is a live running version of Linux, but it's not installed yet, actually. It's just running off of that ISO image that we have here. And so you can click through the installer just like anything else. Things that you're used to. So, you know, English keyboard and default language. And because this is brand new, I'm gonna click a clean install of Linux. Now, advanced and custom is where you would go if you wanted to dual boot, if you wanted to make part of your hard drive do something else, you wanted more swap space, any of those things. But we're just gonna do a clean install right here. No need to do LVM here. I do not think Pop OS uses LVM by default. We don't really need it here. We could. One thing I like is the fact that you install the distro first, then you configure your profile at the first boot after installation. I agree. I do actually like that a lot. You worry about one thing at a time. It's not letting me select this drive. Clean install. Clean install. It might make me, oh, interesting. It might make me, interesting. Link format. Huh. All right. It's I might have to do some Gparted stuff on this. It's not letting me actually use this hard disk. I wonder, I'll go see why that is in a second. I got the LVM to get the hardware. That is very true. So LVM, so for anyone who doesn't know what LVM is logical volume management. Pretty sure. Let's see. Let's actually search in here. Pretty sure it's logical volume management, and not Linux volume management. But it allows you to do some cool things with resizing and managing partitions on your computer. LVM and Linux. Yeah, logical volume manager. Yes, it's pretty interesting. It has caused lots of heartburn. It is great, but yeah, if you've managed systems using LVM, it's kind of weird. It can be pretty problematic because of the way that it works. All right, so it is not like this. It doesn't like my hard drive for some reason. I wonder. Let's fix this. Should be easier than this. It's usually not this difficult. Storage, this should be fine. Could remove it and add a new one. I wonder why. Let's see what's going on here. I want to show you the amazing installer. And also to show you, I also want to show you that you can run as many of these as you want at a time. So I'll spin up some of the other ones that I already have on here. While we're working on this one. So you need an image file to install to that was it. That the VDI is there. It's seeing the VDI. It's not allowing me to choose it. I mean, is it gonna make me partition it first? I don't know. Into sandbox. I'll move this over here while it's running. United States of America. Changes. English default. All right, and so what it's basically not allowing me to do is it's not allowing me to select this drive as a target for installation. Let's see. This does not meet. See, maybe if we read minimum requirement, I might need to make the disk bigger real quick. Let's see. Let's actually see what the minimum is. Pop OS requirements. 20 gigs of storage is recommended. So, I said 10 gigs will be fine. I lied to you. I'm a liar. Okay, I lied to you. You need 20. And so there are a bunch of ways you can do it. I would actually recommend, if I were you, if you're just starting out, to start all over. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm not gonna start over. I'm gonna create a new VDI, dynamically allocated. I'm just gonna give it 47, whatever. Let's give it a bunch. All right. And now I'm gonna start over. So what I did is, in the settings, you can basically, because these are just different resources, you can basically, what I did was I deleted the currently attached hard drive, and I created a new virtual disk image that had more space. I agree, virtual assistant, like 20 gigs seems like a lot for Linux, but pretty crazy. I'm gonna log in here real quick just so that I have another one going and we can start to see my computer usage creep up. You can see now, before I was around 20 something percent CPU. Now I'm in the 30s, and I'm not crushing the computer at all by any means, but I'm not I added a little bit to the load. I have an unnecessarily powerful computer. I do not use any of the power, to be honest. I do not want to install it in that language. Let's see, display settings. Let's change this back. All right, so let's click through all the default settings. Now, if I click clean install, what it should do now is it should give me, yep, I can select it now. What I couldn't do before is I couldn't select this. You just got to select the hard drive here and click erase and install. You can either encrypt or don't encrypt. So by default, you can encrypt your entire hard drive. What this will do is, when you first boot up the computer, you will have to enter in your encryption key to decrypt, to allow it to be able to work properly. So if you're worried, worried about security, you're worried about someone stealing your computer, you can do this or not do it. It provides a very tiny additional latency latency to reads and writes, but it's not noticeable. My laptop is using this. I haven't noticed it at all. I'm not going to encrypt it now because we don't really need to encrypt it. If you do encrypt it, it's going to ask you for a password. Make sure you make that password secure, please. That would be pretty nice. But yeah, let's just say there isn't enough space. I agree. Instead of blocking the selection, I 100% agree. Oh, and the little pop-up that said that this does not meet the minimum requirements, it only showed up when I like kept my mouse over it for a little while. It should have been listed like right underneath, like, hey, this doesn't meet minimum requirements. We will submit some feedback because we should. All right, so this will go ahead and it'll go ahead and it just, extract all the files. It's copying all the files into the right location. Basically, when it's done, it'll say, hey, we're good to go, and it will reboot. And when it reboots, it'll take you through a setup similar to Windows or to Mac, and we will get there. But what I'm going to do while this is running is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to also install a server version really quick. So we'll call this one Ubuntu server. And we'll keep it Ubuntu, we'll keep it Linux, Ubuntu 64-bit. I'm gonna give this, it does not have a graphical user interface, so it actually doesn't need quite as much resources, but I'll still do this. I'm gonna give it 20 gigs, just to be safe here. And this time I'm going to start it up, and I'm gonna choose the other image that I downloaded earlier. And so that's actually right here. I downloaded Ubuntu live server image a little bit earlier, and I'm going to open that up and choose that one. And so we're now gonna, while we're installing the desktop version, we're also going to install a server version. And this is mostly so you can see the differences between a desktop version and a server version, because they are quite different. Whatever you choose, encrypt or not, your swap partition will be encrypted. Yes, so you won't be able to hibernate your system without recreating the swap partition. I didn't know that. Interesting. I did not know that. And this is specifically for, is this specifically for Pop OS, or is this now default behavior of Ubuntu based distributions as a whole? All right, so look how different this server installation is. Now, let's talk about the differences between your desktop and a server really quick. Servers are generally, high-powered computers that are designed to basically serve up data and to run applications, to serve up data, to serve up information, to serve things over a network. But to get the most out of them, you want the least amount of overhead. So it takes a fair amount of computing resources to run your operating system. So Windows has all this flashy stuff, Mac has flashy stuff, animations, all this other stuff. It's running all these things. They take up part of your computer resources. Servers, on the other hand, don't care about those things. So they do not install a graphical user interface generally. And so even the installer is generally much more simplified. Generally, you can only use your keyboard to install it. And it's much, it might be harder for you to install. It may be a little more complicated, but we can kind of run through it. I know it's tiny. I can't actually make it bigger. Maybe I can scaled mode. I don't think I can make it. Oh, that helped a little bit. The reason you can't is because there's certain it's tough to do this sometimes because it hasn't installed all the things that it needs to install. So sometimes it doesn't have access to drivers, to display drivers, and some other stuff. So it can be a little weird when you're trying to get something installed. And so it says, hey, this version of the installer is now available. Okay, update to the new installer. Sure, I will do that. I don't really, I've actually never installed this Ubuntu server, so I actually you know, this is I'm running through this process live with you, first time I'm seeing it, but it generally should be pretty straightforward. And while it's running, we can also check on our other installation. Cool, so this is done, and it says, hey, everything's good to go. Go ahead and restart the device. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna restart it. Now, sometimes this is problematic. Sometimes this isn't handled properly by VirtualBox. So because there's a disk in the drive, so the thing that we spun up, that we used to spin up Pop! OS, it's in the hard drive right now. And what happens is it rebooted and it took us right back to the installation page, and that's fine. So sometimes you have to shut it down and pull that disk out of the drive, basically. And so I'm gonna go back in here, go to settings. I'm gonna find that disk here, and I'm gonna pull it from the drive. I'm gonna remove attachment, and I should be fine now. Now, this does not always happen. Sometimes some distros are smart enough to make this work inside of virtual boxes or sort of virtual machines, but not all the time. All right, so keyboard configuration, I want to leave these as English, very English, because I'm good. So this is still the server. It's asking me some stuff about Ethernet ports, so configure at least one interface with the server can use to talk to other machines. And so I'm gonna leave this as is. I'm gonna assume that this is gonna create what I need out of the box. I'm not gonna edit any of the info. Proxy address, generally you're going to be installing these things into the networks and the systems that are already set up to do certain things. So they give you a bunch of options for networking. They give you a bunch of options, a lot of options for networking, a lot of options for integrating into different systems. But right now I don't really need to do any of this stuff, so I'm going to keep all this default. And again, you must use your keyboard to do this. Configure a guided storage layout or create a custom one. So this is where this screen right here is the exact same screen as when it was asking me, hey, do you want to do a clean install of Pop! OS, or do you want to do something advanced, something different? This is the same thing. So up here is use entire disk, or I can go down here and do a custom storage layout, which would allow me to do that. But again, I'm going to be leaving it as is. You can also see that this is going to set up LVM by default. I'm going to leave that here automatically, but I'm going to go ahead and go down and I'm going to click done. It's going to give me a summary of what's going on. Again, much harder to read, much more confusing, but really, like, when you take the time to look at it and to take it in, it's the same information just displayed to you in a less palatable way. Yeah, it's also going to install Grub for me, really nice. It's going to, set up everything that we need. Are we sure we can continue? I'm going to continue, and it's going to take me through the setup immediately. So not after the restart, it's going to take me through it here. So I'm gonna say, hey, my name is Aaron. My server's name is Mastermind. My username is going to be Mastermind. I choose a password. I'm going to choose password 1234 with a capital P because that's very secure. But none of you can get to this, and it doesn't matter if you did. I'm gonna hit tab. It's gonna say, hey, do you want to? It's gonna basically start to ask you if you want to pre-install some things that are common in servers. OpenSSH is going to be the tool that would allow you to remotely log into the server. So if I want this, I can hit spacebar. If I don't have to. I'm not going to install anything here right now. Forgot to mention that Pop! OS does not install Grub. That is true. We'll talk about Grub in a second. You know what's funny? I did not know Pop! OS did not install Grub until I tried to dual boot my desktop, and it hurt my heart and it messed me up, and I was really bothered. Booty whole space plus I didn't know that. I did not know that frequency hop. I went ahead and I installed the Grub, and it caused some problems, and I did some other fancy stuff, and then I got it working some weird way. What's up, Cocho? How you doing today? Good to have you. I love that emote. It's amazing. I need it. I definitely need it. But what grub is a bootloader that allows you to again select which operating system you want to go into when you are dual booting or multi-booting or whatever. But yes, Pop! OS does not install that by default. It is a lot of weird things because again, it's made for Pop! OS's compute for our System 76 laptops and desktops, and they actually use different firmware. They actually use they have an open firmware, they have an open bootloader that they use, and like they got a bunch of stuff. But now look, it's gonna give me a bunch of stuff that I can install. I don't want to install any of this stuff over here. I can install Kubernetes. I don't want any of this stuff right now, but you could if you would like. I'm gonna click done, and it's gonna go ahead and it's gonna start installing the system for me. And let's go back here to Pop! OS and check this out. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. If it lets me, it's not letting me. So I'm gonna go through the setup. Next, it's taking me through the setup. It won't let me right click for some reason to make this bigger, but I will give it a name. And you can set up a username on here. I'm just gonna, leave it as is. Set up a password 1234, best password ever. Oh, and it's strong. Look at that, password 1234. Ooh, amazing. Very strong password. Don't use password 1234. Please don't use password 123. Okay, so just that simple, just like you would do in Windows, just like you would do in Mac. It runs through and it says, hey, I got an account created for you. You gave me your name, you gave me all the other information. And now I'm dropped into my desktop and I can start to set things up. So now again, I can switch it up. I can actually take it full screen if I want. Full screen mode. And I thought that would change it. It didn't. So desktop Linux can be a little bit weird. Virtualizing a desktop can be a little bit weird. There's generally again, you probably don't have the things that are necessary, the drivers and things that are necessary. Now VirtualBox does give you these things. There are ways to get these things installed. A little bit out of the scope for today, even though you could do it. And the place that you would do that would be into devices and insert guest edition CD image. So right now it's not letting me do a maximum resolution. This is actually the wrong resolution for my computer. It's actually too big actually. But inserting that will give you some of the tools and things that you need. But again, we don't need that right now. We have a desktop, and if I hit the Windows key or go up here to activities, you can see I already have some things installed. So what you're seeing right here is something called GNOME or GNOME. This is the desktop environment that we were talking about. And so it's a way for me to interact with my computer. So I can type in a bunch of stuff and I can see all of my applications and click them around, and it's really nice. I like it. Some people don't like it. I have a web browser already installed, but I can also install more stuff. Pop! OS has something called the Pop Shop, which is this thing right here, just like the just like the App Store for Macs. I can install applications by just clicking in here, and when I see something I like, I can just install it just like that. And I'm going to be typing my password, which is password 1234, and it'll go ahead and install this piece of software for me. Really nice. I can install things like Slack. So you can get all these cool stuff. It's not only the bad stuff, and it's not only the weird hacker apps. Like I said before, you can get all the stuff that you care about, and get these apps, and I can use them how I would use any other desktop, and I can start to go through and set this up how I want to use it. And eventually you can get it looking how we got this one looking, which is a little bit later, but which is a little bit different. And so this is one that's already kind of set up, in a different way. Has some applications and stuff on it already, but you can get it looking kind of cool, and you can get more apps, and I have a bunch of different apps here now. and you know, you can get all the tools and stuff that you want and make it your own, which is really nice. And so that's like the Linux desktop is, again, just like a computer. This probably looks very Mac-esque to you, and so it's very comfortable to use once you take some time to get it set up. You know, everything that you would want to do kind of works just like you're used to, kind of like a nice little hybrid between Windows and Mac. You know, some of the things that you expect. You can edit files. You know, there's some document tools here, some better ones than that. Yeah, you know, Microsoft Word equivalents here if you want to type up a paper or something. So, you know, a lot of cool tools for you who want to use Linux as a desktop environment. Yes, that I don't know how that password was strong, but it was very strong. So I'm gonna keep doing it. But yes, Kocho, yes, I have used Solus. I love the Budgie desktop environment. I love Budgie. It's the best. I prefer, I love it. So Solus is another one. I think Solus is Debian based as well. But it uses a simplified desktop environment called Budgie. I really like Budgie a lot. Yeah, I like it a lot. The only reason I'm not using it is because people always ask me what I'm using, and I like to point them to things that have lots of documentation. And I find that there's not a lot out there on Budgie, to be honest, or at least I haven't found that much, but Solus is pretty good. I do like Solus. The Inspector, how long have I been using Pop OS? I've been using it for 2 years. I bought a System 76 laptop, I think 2 years ago, and or I don't, well, actually it might have been Ubuntu at the time, I don't know. I've been using Pop OS since it came out. I think I got it installed on that laptop as soon as it came out, so been a while. But yeah, it's like, I think it's better than vanilla Ubuntu. I think the tools and stuff that it has in it, I think the Pop Shop alone is worth it for a lot of people. But again, their compatibility and their firmware and like installing drivers and things is a little bit nicer than vanilla Ubuntu, and I highly recommend it. I think there's no, if you're an Ubuntu user, I don't really see any reason why you wouldn't want to use it. And Linux doesn't get computer viruses. Well, you can get viruses, but it's a little more difficult, a lot more difficult. Generally, you have to like actively install them. That's pretty interesting, but you can get viruses, but it is much more difficult. You likely will not ever get a virus, but you could. People say it lacks packages, but now I have Snap and Flatpak. I do not like Snap. I don't like Snap. Flatpak's okay, but I don't love that either. You know, I'm old school, I think, a little bit. I don't really like Snap at all. How many machines do you have and how are they used? Great question, Doc Jones. I have 3 machines now. I've downgraded. I have this machine, which is the monster machine, which you know, I use for a lot of things. I really just use it for video editing, for streaming purposes, for gaming as well. That's what this machine is used for. I have a ThinkPad X1 Extreme Gen 2, which is my like mobile powerhouse. So video editing and gaming, a little light gaming on the go, but video editing, high processing things. I don't really run a lot of VMs. I'm kind of a cloud guy, so I might run some containers if I'm doing some development or something. But I use that for, you know, content creation on the go. And my System 76 laptop I use for development. I prefer to develop, traditionally I prefer to develop in Linux and to do anything technical in Linux. But like I said, as Windows subsystem for Linux 2 gets more and more, like as I get my hands on it, as I get to, you know, test it out, I might be switching to that as much as I can. But we'll see. I'm probably gonna make my System 76 laptop my, like, I have a capture card in this PC. I might use that to do all my streams, because I used to do that. I might do them all through that laptop. But yeah, System 76 is that Linux laptop maker. They're the ones who make Pop OS, but they actually make Linux laptops that they, fully support, which is really nice to have a company behind them. I really do. My laptop has held up like very well. They don't make these laptops. These are Chinese laptops, are Clevo and Sager laptops, but again, they bring them in-house. They write their own custom firmware drivers for them, so like they work 100% when you get them, and they're fully supported. They do make their own desktops though, called the Thelio, which is pretty cool. I don't need a desktop, but they make these in-house, completely custom, which is really nice. They build all of it. And I think they're gonna start doing R&D on their own laptops, but it's pretty cool. I do think it's pretty cool. I would definitely want to check them out though. It's really easy to get started with Pop. I personally switched between Debian and Arch on my daily PC. Yeah, I've used lots of distributions once I got the System 76 laptop, and like it was the first time where I really just got it and like didn't have to worry about it, and it was kind of nice to just have a working Linux laptop that I didn't have to worry about like ever, which is pretty nice. Oh yeah, I'm a huge ThinkPad fan. That's the reason it took me so long to buy a System 76 laptop, because I love ThinkPads. You can get them for cheap, they run forever, and I'm clumsy and they're nice. What do you think about the Fedora? I like Fedora. I chose that. I did put that as the Red Hat version of choice in here. So if you wanted to pick a Red Hat based distribution for your desktop, I think Fedora is really cool. I like Fedora. But again, I think that Ubuntu took the, like, hey, let's get the cool tools in, like for gaming, for content creation. Let's get the cool tools like in and available and easy to install before Fedora did. And I think Fedora is great, but I prefer for home and home stuff, like non-enterprise stuff. I just prefer Debian based distros, but pretty cool. I mean, it is a good distro. All right, so this is all done, installation complete. This is the server. I'm gonna reboot it. Please, so this one tells us what to do. It says, hey, please first remove the installation medium and then press enter. I'm just gonna press enter. I'm just gonna shut it down. And I'm gonna do the same thing that I did before. I'll go into settings, storage. I'm gonna remove, oh, it's empty. Good, it did it for me, which is really nice. And right now I'm quite impressed with the number of available packages. Yes, in the Arch user repository for Manjaro, I agree. I 100% agree. Actually, I really like AUR a lot. I like AUR a lot. I used Manjaro for a little while. I was using, they shut it down the project, but I was using something called Antergos, and it was great. I don't know why it's discontinued, but it was amazing. It was really amazing. I thought it was better than Manjaro or Manjaro. I call it Manjaro. I don't know. But yeah, Antergos I thought it was great. It also made it much easier to install. Like they had their own community distributions for NVIDIA setups. I don't know if anyone's ever dealt with, installing drivers for graphics cards in Linux, but it can be super problematic. You can black screen yourself, but yeah, Antergos was cool. But I do like Manjaro. It's a pretty cool distro. If you wanna hop into Arch and you don't want to do the archiest Arch install, Manjaro is pretty darn cool. Crunchbag Linux? I never heard of Crunchbag Linux. I'm gonna check that out. That's one I missed for sure. All right, is this booting up? What's happening? Oh, okay. So this is the server version of Linux here. So much different than what you saw before. So it says, hey, mastermind login. I'm gonna type in my password. Oh no, was my username mastermind. My password was password 1234. And this is the difference right here. I know it may look completely different to you, but these two computers are no different. This right here is no different, almost no different than the thing that you were looking at here with the graphical user interface. You can actually open up the terminal and they're essentially the same thing. And now they're essentially the same thing, but the server version comes and looks like this. When people talk about learning Linux, they're talking about learning this and not the graphical user piece, and how to administer the computer via this command line. And this is why Linux is often so intimidating, but I'm telling you, it is it's actually pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. It is you basically just have to learn how to issue commands to it, and most of it is just memorizing the commands that you can issue, but you're controlling the computer through commands, and that's all it is. So the same way that I would in here, the same way that I would go into my documents directory, the same way that I would move into my documents directory, I can do that from the command line exactly the same. I could go cd into documents, and now I'm in my documents directory. There's nothing here, but if I right clicked and clicked new folder and called it test folder, and I looked here, now test is right here. So we're not diving into this yet. This is just to give you a little precursor to what we're going to learn on Wednesday and what we're going to start diving into, but it's not different. They're the exact same thing, even though this is uglier and harder to understand, and you have no idea what you're looking at. They're the same thing. They're both the computer. They're just different representations of the computer. And so server version, which this is what you'll get if you get something through one of those VPSs, through DigitalOcean or through Amazon Light Sale. They will basically give you one of these that you'll log into, and it'll look like this. This is what we're going to be using most of the time, but I'll probably be administering one of these through a GUI version. Like, we probably won't be in my Windows. We'll probably be in a Linux distro like this, so that you can see the things that are happening. But that's it. That's it for part one. Again, we just wanted to get a little understanding about what Linux was as an operating system, that is free and open source, that's really just a kernel. Learn a little bit about distributions, that there are different distributions that have different softwares and things packaged up. So someone brought up Solus Linux, and so Solus Linux is using something called Budgie, and basically it's a different way of this working. So the same way where how you get into Windows, and in Windows, you have your start button, and you can click on the files, and you have your little Windows things, and you have your icons down here. But on the Mac, you have your little dock, and that's how you manage everything, and it has Finder. That's kind of what a desktop environment is. It's the way that the environment allows you to interact with the different tools and services inside of your computer. And so there are a bunch of different ones. There's i3, there's KDE, there's Cinnamon, there's Mate, there's a million of them. But that's why I gave you a video, to know the differences between them. Yes, Inspector, NVIDIA drivers they're rough. Which distro, if you're a newbie? I would say, if you're brand new, fresh out of the gate, Ubuntu is a safe bet, or Pop OS. So again, I put them in. If you click on the link that's here, I put some links here, and this is the one that I recommend if you want to do desktop stuff. Is Pop OS. There's another really good one out there called Elementary OS, which is really nice as well. Really clean, really simple. If you want to do that as well, it kind of gives you all the stuff you need out of the box. It's really nice, and they call it a replacement for Windows and Mac OS. But Ubuntu or Pop OS is really what I would recommend. So we have a Slack. We do have a Discord as well, but the Discord is for subscribers. So we do have both. So feel free to, I highly encourage you to hop into the Slack. Right now, I'll be 100% honest with you, I do not do as much as I should to keep to make the Slack or the Discord a place where a lot of conversation happens. But again, that's because I have a full-time job. But that's changing. That's changing in 56 days. So 56 days, I will be doing Mastermind full-time, not just Mastermind Academy. So this is Mastermind Academy. I will be teaching. I'll never, like, this is what I love. I will never stop teaching these things. I love to just, you know, talk tech, teach tech, learn tech, help people get into tech. Always be doing this, but Mastermind is a, like, I'm a part of an incubator, and it's bigger than that. We're, you know, doing some consulting, doing placement as well. So if anyone's interested in, you know, is looking for a job, is looking for a way to get into the industry, doing some advocacy and making some connections for especially for entry-level roles, is a big thing that I'm going to be working on. But yeah, Mastermind's a bigger company than this, but I will have way more time to do it in 60 days. You know, I'll have to make one of those dumb videos on YouTube that says, you know, why I quit my 6-figure software job. You know, I'm a technical lead. For everyone who doesn't know, I'm a technical lead. I do DevOps, but I'm a technical lead at a software company here in Baltimore. That I love, that is amazing. They're the ones who actually pushed me to do this. They're actually supporting me in this endeavor. Yeah, I'll have to make one of those corny videos. It'll be fun. This will be placements everywhere. Hold off. I have a place for you to send resumes, but hold off for just a few. I will give you information very shortly on social and on here on how to submit resumes so that we can have conversations. Because, you know, I'm not here to, I'm an engineer, and I understand how these things work. People who are trying to get into the industry, you probably haven't experienced this yet, but the technical placement game is a savage one, and you will get blown up and annoyed by people who don't truly care about your career path. They just want to fill some spots. So you know, I will be talking to literally everybody who submits a resume to find out what you're looking for, kind of where you are, what you might be interested in, to also help you have a path, a learning path as well, to understand what you should hit next to be able to get to where you want to go. But yeah, we're gonna be talking about all the information about all that stuff's coming out real soon. A lot's happening in the next 50 something days, and that's why that's the biggest reason we're having to push off pipelines, because I got to get that stuff wrapped up before before I'm full time. And so yeah, then it'll be fun. Then I'm telling you guys, it's gonna be the best. I'm gonna have time for everything, and we can really, like, I think we can really grow as a community. Like, I'm really excited to start building some things with you all. And one of the things that I'm working on is how do you scale experience? I think that's one of the toughest things. How do you scale legitimate experience that people can actually, that's tangible, that makes sense, that is valuable, but also that companies take seriously? And I have some interesting ideas for scaling experience that I think is going to be beneficial to a lot of people. But yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll definitely be talking about that. I want to get one of those 500,000 tech job openings up in the H-1B visa freeze. Hey, I'll help you out. You know, any way that I can. Like I said, I'm moving pretty fast, so I'll have a way. Like right now, I don't have an effective way. I'm still working on grabbing a piece of software to effectively track and manage. I don't want to lose anyone's resume because a couple have already gotten lost in my email. So I want to make sure that I have an effective way to do that. I'm evaluating some pieces of software now for that. And like I said, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys throughout the process. I know what I'm good at, I know what I'm not good at. And managing my email is not what I'm good at. And so if I can clear as many things out of my email as possible and use a tool to help me out with this, I will. So I'm gonna definitely do that. And any internship opportunities, killer dude, absolutely. I do have a lot of connects on internships. Like I said, I've been building the companies that I'm working with. I've been building the companies that, like I said, I've been doing a lot of advocacy. Yes, I do have some leads for university students. The best way for you to reach out to me right now is honestly to send me a DM on Twitter. I know that sounds weird, but all of my social media is mastermind.io. It's either send me a DM on Twitter or to send me a message on LinkedIn. Email's not gonna work for me right now. My email's already I'm already behind on it. I haven't caught up on it yet. But I'm caught up on LinkedIn completely, and I have like 3 Twitter messages to respond to. But I do. There'll also be very soon on the site, there will be a place for these things. But internships is one of the biggest things that I care about the most. Because again, I'm thinking about how to scale experience, or how to scale, how do you scale experience? How do you scale kind of that access to experience? Because everyone needs you to have 5 years of experience. How do you scale that? Internships is something that's close to my heart, and I do have a handle on a lot of those. Yeah, entry level positions are the hardest. There are people who can get you it's going to be a lot of focus on entry and mid-level, because I think that's the most underserved piece of the tech community, and the hardest for everyone to navigate. It's not just how, I want to be clear, it's not just hard it is hard for you as the individual to navigate it. It is very hard, and it affects you the most. But there are a surprising amount of companies who would like to start developing a pipeline of engineers that would like to start giving people opportunities, but they know that they don't have the framework set up for it, and they don't know how to even approach they don't want to just bring in people they can't support. And so it's been interesting having these conversations. I thought it'd be really tough. I thought it would be fighting people tooth and nail, if you want to be great in the future, you're gonna have to start cultivating the talent now. You're gonna have to start taking in and giving opportunities to people who don't have 30 years of experience. You're gonna have to start doing these things, and companies we know, we just don't know how right now. So it's been pretty interesting having those conversations. You're experiencing QA engineering, but trying to get involved in cloud engineering. So that's pretty dope, Mr. Jalapeno. As you know, I'm a DevOps engineer, pretty ingrained in the cloud. I think that QA is one of the greatest disciplines, because you've probably been adjacent to just about everything. It's a really good leap board position. I think it's going to be much easier than you think to move into whatever other engineering role you would like to move into. I think that your QA experience is very valuable in any place that you go, any discipline that you go to. And if you want any, seriously, I really need to create a forum. All right, by Wednesday, I'm promising you right here, right now, by Wednesday, I will have created a process. I'm stamping it right now. I will have created a process for us to talk through these things, or at least I want to have a space where I will respond to you in at least 24 hours, at the most 24 hours. And so I'll pick a spot, I'll pick a place where I'm going to hit every single day, and I'm going to clear it out every single day. And I will let you know on Wednesday. Where that'll be. So bring that information again, because I would love to talk to you about that. I would love to talk to you about that and what you can do and what leads that I have, and where to go with it and help you get there 100%. Do you see more apprenticeships programs coming up? A lot of companies are starting apprenticeship programs. Yeah, I do. I actually see a lot of companies, again, starting to do what I'm trying to do here, is to start to create a place where they can start creating that pipeline. Costs are going to continue to go up for them until they start investing in the talent that they crave so much. I do see apprenticeship programs going up a bit. I think it'll be slow though, but I do think it will happen for sure. Class RE implements DevOps. You are big facts. So RoCal, we have a journey. We have a course called Pipelines, which is it's called Pipelines, a journey into software delivery, infrastructure, and automation. And it's really the DevOps / SRE course. And again, that's the stuff that I'm passionate about. That's stuff that I know the most. We're having to put that on hold for a little while because that's the biggest and kind of most structured course. And September, 57 days is when we'll start that back up. If you're interested in that stuff, we've done some stuff in the past. You can check out YouTube if you're interested in that. Are certs like HashiCorp, Terraform worth the time and money in your experience? Phenomenal question. I I'm actually trying to see what's necessary to. I would love to teach a HashiCorp certs course on here. Do I think getting the cert is all that important? Not yet. I think it's their stuff is pretty new. I think it's within the year they started offering those certifications. I don't think they hold that much weight yet. But I think I look through the course material. I think the act of studying for them is valuable. And if you study for them, if you have the money, I think they're $100, $150, if you have the money to go grab them, I say go grab them. There are places where they will be valuable. I think HashiCorp certs will become very valuable in the future, or much more valuable than they are now. I think they will be pretty valuable. Right now, like I said, the only certs I recommend people get right now, it depends on what you're trying to do. The only certs I really recommend are some type of cloud cert. I think can help, just because a lot of I've been surprised at the amount of companies that either require them or really like them. I've been really surprised, actually. And then if you're in the cybersecurity space, like Network Plus and Security Plus, just because a lot of those roles require those. And I've seen that those have been pretty valuable recently. Yeah, and besides that, like maybe like if you're in a deep networking and stuff, the Cisco certs are always great. But like, yeah, I mean, certs, again, just tools. If you got a little bit extra cash, I think, again, the act of studying for them, I do think is valuable. I think it's very valuable, or can be pretty valuable for most of the tests. A lot of the tests have gotten in a better space to where I think they do a good job of helping you actually understand what problems the tools solve. But yeah, we're going down the wrong path in tech than the path I want to pursue. We're blessed to be in tech. I hear you. I definitely hear you, Tony. I love that. But yeah, that's fair. Course correct. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. The reason why I'm in tech, I love tech. Tech is great. I'm blessed to be in tech, absolutely. But tech's not my passion. Like tech's not like I always just, I want to spend all my time, developing these cool apps. Now that I can, it is actually very interesting to me, and I do spend my time doing some of those things. But I like to use tech as a means to do the things that I'm passionate about. So maybe you can utilize your tech experience and the resources that tech affords you to be able to do the thing that you want to pursue. I don't know. But yeah, like I said, Doc Jones, if you check out, there's a whole DevOps, like intro to DevOps, 12, it was a 12-week course. It is on YouTube. If you do !YouTube, oh yeah, you got it above there. If you want to check that out to kind of see the stuff we covered, but pipelines is on the website, and you can kind of see what we're planning on covering. But yeah, it's actually going to be pretty intense, like full reference architecture, full reference infrastructure. Really learning how to take things, break them down, really understand how to move things through a pipeline, create pipelines, how to approach them. Absolutely. In my second plus, study for it. Yeah, I think Security Plus is a really good one. CCNA. This year, you got your CCNA, AWS Solutions Architect Associate. Would it be wise to get RHCSA next? Now, that is a great question. It depends on what you're trying to do. The RHCSA is, so that's everyone, that is the Red Hat Certified Systems Administrator certification. It is a difficult cert. I don't think in this new world, this new cloud world, so much gets abstracted away from you. I'm not sure that you need that cert. It's a difficult cert, and I'm not sure that, unless you want to be a Linux administrator, I'm not sure that you should get it. But I mean, again, with your CCNA, your networking skills, having the cloud cert, if you want to be, like that deep hands-on systems administrator, it might be helpful. But it is a difficult cert. So, take that into account. I don't think there are a lot of people who are like really looking for it, but I do think when people see it, they're like, okay, like cool. But I don't think people are like, you need this to do it. But yeah. Oh, well, Rocal, so I took the RHCSA when I was 24. So I was a couple years into my career. as a Linux administrator, and that test wrecked me. Now I would do better on it now. And I haven't studied for it, but like I just remember it scarred me. That exam scarred me. I'm not gonna lie to you. It scarred me. It did. I was hurt when I left there. I was like, I will never pass a certification for anything in my whole life. Now, of course, that's not true. And again, you learn a lot with, you know, experience. You learn a lot with, you know, as you get older, just maturity. So maybe if I don't know, maybe it's not that difficult, but I remember it being difficult and it scarred me. And I've been telling people for years that's difficult. So maybe I should stop. Maybe I should stop. But it was hard. It was hard for me. It was difficult. Yeah, I'm gonna grab so I just was about to sign up. I almost signed up yesterday, but then I didn't. I'm gonna take my I'm actually gonna try to take my Solutions Architect Pro exam. I wanted to take it before the 60 days was up. Like I wanted to get it before I was full time, just for like myself. But we'll see what happens. I'm gonna take that. And I think I'm gonna take the HashiCorp certs just so I know what the tests are like, because I would love to. So many people asking me, like I said, Docker is the #1 tech I get asked about, and that's why we're doing the Docker course starting tomorrow. But besides that, after that, I get asked about all the DevOps tooling, all the things that people associate with DevOps tooling. Terraform is a huge one that people ask me about all the time as well. And I think it would be fun to teach like to one of those courses, especially since there's not a lot of specific cert material for those courses yet, again because they're so new. What's your take on the SA Pro? Okay, the SA Pro, I don't need, like, do I think it's hard? Yes, I've taken it before, and it was difficult, but I took it before they changed it, and it was only difficult because it was really like their wording on the questions was super odd, and I couldn't ever pin down but it was difficult to pin down exactly what they were asking. Like it was tough to answer the question because I couldn't always tell exactly what they were asking. And what they did before is they changed this, but before they would give you multiple correct answers and ask you for the best answer. They've changed that up. The questions are actually, I've heard, harder, and you need to know the domain a little more deeply, but there's no more like, they've taken away a lot of the ambiguity. So we'll see. We'll definitely see. Oh, what did I do? Too far from my face? I don't know. Maybe I hit it. Maybe I messed it up. It's a bit too low. My mic's all the way. It's all the way. It looks like it's picking me up fine. Maybe I'll put it all the way right here. Maybe that's a little bit better. I used to keep it here, but I tried to move it to get it out of my face. I hear on that SA Associate was like that. Yeah. So I overstudied for the Solutions Architect Associate, so that was really easy for me. I took it at reInvent, and I was like the first person out of the room. But like I said, I really overstudied for that. Way overstudied for that. The developer was, I thought that was pretty easy, but yeah, the Solutions Architect Pro was just like, it was like, man, what are you really asking me? And it was just fatiguing because there were so many questions, and you know, but I think I'll be ready for this next time around. But cool. You guys had a lot of great questions tonight. I love this stuff. Any beginner project ideas for a portfolio? So I assume you mean for like a web development portfolio. What do you mean, web development in particular, Mr. Professor? Mr. Professor 3. I tried. I'll just call you Mr. Professor. I assume you mean for web development portfolio. I do not. I honestly, I don't know any because I'm not a web developer. And whenever I do interview web developers, I never look at their portfolios. So I'm a bad person to ask about that, but I am gonna do some digging because I think that question gets asked so much. It sounds like there aren't any good answers for it. And so maybe there needs to be some answers for it. Maybe there are some real legitimate projects that, you know, if we think about it, we could really make a list of really a good collection of projects that would really display your strengths. Yeah, 100% fail, and then 5% a random, given the easy version. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, software engineer. Yeah, I that one's tough. That one is tough. I don't have a good answer for you now, but I think that we can brainstorm some good ideas. But it's 9:20. I do have to get out of here. I have to actually finish up. You know, these last 50 something days are going to be pretty tough, actually, because again, I'm the lead of my project, and I have to. There's a lot I have to finish in this last 60 days to make sure everything can get handed off correctly. I will definitely answer this SheBoss question. Sorry for the long question. Never apologize for the long question. I asked Coding Garden this question the other day. I want to get your take. How do you define backend? Oh, great question. Development. Some people define it in terms of web development, others in terms of types of applications in Java. There's anything to do with web development? That is a phenomenal question, and you will get different answers everywhere you go. Generally, when people are talking about backend, generally they are usually just not talking about front-end web development, in my experience. Like, even if you are working in a company, maybe building an in-house application that has a front end, but is not, what you would consider a kind of front-end web project. It's a piece of software that has look and feel. I've generally found that people are usually talking about everything else besides front-end web development. Now, I think the way that web technologies have moved, I think this is getting tougher and tougher. I do define back-end web development as generally server-side and business logic items. This can get, pretty tough. Really server-side, any type of logic that happens server side is what I would consider. The integration of systems in the background, those APIs and things. The lines are definitely blurred, especially with things like React, where where nowadays you can have the client do a lot of the processing. Really weird. I still consider that to be front end. I still consider it to be front end, but yeah, I think any type of development that exists, not client side, to be 100% honest, is what I usually consider it as, and that just comes from the places that I've been and the way that those people have defined it and what I've touched. Now ask me what I think is easier, and I'll tell you every single day of the week that my mind just works better. Like, I'm a back-end developer. Like, that's what I think. Front end is the most difficult thing on the planet. It is not easy. Front end has changed substantially. Front end really did used to be HTML and CSS and very light JavaScript, but that is not the case anymore. Front end development has morphed into something pretty intense, to be 100% honest. But yeah, we're about to do full stack DevOps. It's all engineering to me, to be 100% honest. It's all engineering. I think as people, as disciplines continue to advance, I think there'll be a point where, we all have a core set of knowledge about a lot of things, and then we specialize in some of the, deeper things. But it's all engineering to me. Full stack development, I think, changes all the time. I think it's becoming, more akin to what people used to think about DevOps as, but I don't know. It does. I'm front end. Will you be? I want you all to see me one day. Like, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, all right, I just solved this intense problem. This pretty intense infrastructure problem, or like, I worked out this thing that was kind of intense that most people would think is intense, and then they're like, all right, we have one ticket left in the sprint, so I'll pick it up because it's available. And it's like, yeah, there's a bug, and you know, every, you know, this little line is not displaying where it should be. The little red accent line's not there. And when I tell you the hoops that my mind jumps through trying to track this thing down and to like logically follow React breaks me every time. And you know, I deal with React. I write React almost every day, or at least I touch React, you know, very often, and it breaks me every time. And I just, you know, I chalk it up to, hey, my mind wasn't built for this, and I struggle. But we're actually on this channel. We are actually going to be diving into some Gatsby projects, so that one, I can become a better web developer. But the project that I want us to build, Gatsby probably makes the most sense. So we're gonna learn how to use it, 100%. Have you formally learned React through a course? No, not at all. Maybe I should do that. I learned to React by sitting down and staring at a problem, my very first task I got was to change the color of Google. I'll show you the map right here. sba.gov/ hold on, I'll show you exactly what I did. Local assistance. We have this sweet map here, and we had to change the colors of the Google map, to the contrast of the Google map, to make it more accessible to, you know, users with poor sight. Yeah, and that was the first thing I ever did in React as a little, you know, dip my feet into React. When I tell you, I looked at this, I was like, I can do this. I know CSS, gotta be some CSS. Great. When I tell you, I stayed at this for like 4 days, and like I like started to learn React by just like seeing the patterns and figuring stuff out, and then I had someone sit down and teach me what to do, and they did it for me. I was really close, and they did it for me in 2 seconds. I didn't fully understand props. I still don't. Now I understand props, but I didn't understand props at the time, and I had to pass in some information that I was not passing in. But I probably should take a course. I've learned React through like working with others, like working with real web developers through problems, and you know, I'll pick up a lot of the concepts through that. But that's so far as I've learned it. But I need to sit down and actually learn React for sure. Coding with Mosh, I'll check it out for sure. Oh yeah, yep. I work for a company called Fearless, and yes, we're government contractors, but we are dope government contractors. We're not your run-of-the-mill government contractors. You know, so check it out. You know, Fearless Tech, pretty great place. We are hiring. We just hired a bunch of people. You know, we are still hiring, I believe. But yeah, this is the project that I manage. It's more like SBA.gov, the whole digital footprint, infrastructure, architecture of the Small Business Administration. Yeah. So you guys can go check out the website. This application actually is open source as well. The front end of this is actually open source, which is interesting. So you can actually go check this out. So you can probably see that, you know, I've got some commits in here, and they're probably terrible commits, but you know, your boy's in here somewhere. You know, I don't push a lot to prod here. I'll see, but yeah, see, there we go. Yeah, I'm in there. But you can actually go here and look at this code. It won't really work without the data behind it, but you can go look at it. I'll share it because it is so everyone does fully remote nowadays. So certainly reach out and see. So I think it's project by project, but I think during this time, I think they're very open to fully remote. Yeah, pretty sure they're very open to it. Yeah, and there are people there that are there are people there that are fully remote already. But the office is really dope. So I think they like people to be there. But yeah, check them out. Like I said, I worked at a lot of places. They're by far the best company I've ever worked for. Do I even have all my jobs on my LinkedIn? I have. I do not. I have some stuff missing, but I worked at a lot of places. I worked at a bunch of places, and I've been at Fearless for 3 years and 10 months. Look at these other things: 6 months, a year and 4 months, 11 months, a year and 4 months, a year and 2 months, 5 months. You know, I don't even have all the jobs there, but like I've been here for almost 4 years, and that just, like I said, I let my time here speak for itself. But yeah. But cool, that's it for tonight. I do need to get out of here. I need to get some stuff done. But again, thank you everyone for all the questions. I love the questions. Keep the questions coming every stream. I really like that. I think that the questions are more valuable than than the content of the stream sometimes. And again, I've got the action item. I will, by Wednesday, I'll have a way for you to get questions, to interact, to kind of talk to me about your goals and things, to see how I can help, to see how, if you have questions about internships, about jobs, whatever, I'm going to make sure that I have a process set up for that by Wednesday. That is my commitment to you. But yeah, but I appreciate it. Appreciate all the love tonight. Appreciate all the gifted subs. If you're interested in containers, tomorrow we'll be diving into Docker. If not, I hope to see you Wednesday. We'll be getting really hands-on, and we'll be, starting to learn commands and really starting to understand how to navigate a Linux system, and seeing what we're doing there. But thank you very much. Usually we raid people at the end of the stream. So let's see who's on. Prime's on. We're sometimes we like to do smaller streamers. Tonight we're gonna head over to there's some people who are super popular that will hit up a lot because I think their content is amazing, and because I'll probably watch this, because I'll probably stay, because Prime does a bunch of Vim stuff and he's super smart, and I'm trying to really get good at Vim. I'm okay at Vim. I want to get really good at Vim, so we will head over here. Well, peace out. Let's raid. We'll be out of here in what, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6? Nope. I gotta type it in first correctly. I think I always forget the at the front. The Prime Agen. Got it. First try. Vim Wizards Unite. We got it. See, I'm good, but I ain't great yet. I'm gonna get there. Thanks for the stream. All right, Callow. Good to see you, man. We'll hop over your stream. One day when you're streaming, we got you, man. We got you. I'll be there. I'll be there next time you're there too. Like probably tomorrow if you're doing that. But all right, we're out of here. Peace. Have a good night.